Hello, everybody. My name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Out on Film, Atlanta's LGBTQ Film Festival. And our 38th annual festival is about to start. And we have an amazing lineup this year. One of the great documentaries we have as part of our virtual catalog is Outliers and Outlaws. And we're going to speak to the director and choreographer, Courntey Hermann, in a moment. Outliers and Outlaws is about the hundreds of lesbians who migrated to Eugene, Oregon from the 1960s to the 1990s, and who agreed on one thing: everything was going to be different. This is such a well-made, comprehensive documentary. So thank you, first of all, for just making this and getting it out there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jim.
Yeah. Well, just tell me a little bit about the impetus of how this all started. I know that your team did, I think it was 83 interviews, but just tell me how this all began.
This film actually started as an oral history project,
Okay.
and there were 83 collected histories from people who had built the lesbian community in Eugene, Oregon from the 1960s through the 1990s. And there were many, many, many more who had volunteered, but who weren't interviewed because there were only so many resources. And so my colleague, Judith Raiskin, who's also the producer of Outliers and Outlaws, she and her friend and colleague Linda Long at the University of Oregon Library, they brought all 83 of these folks down into the library basement. That's how I imagine it. And they recorded this really rich collection of stories that are now publicly accessible online. The full interviews of all 83 of these folks are publicly accessible. And from there, I was brought in with my partner, Carrie Beth Elliott, who's the editor of the film, and we helped Judith and Linda create a curated digital exhibit that interprets this history. Because it's one thing to have an accessible queer history online in the form of, these great recorded interviews, but it's another to provide the next level of accessibility, which is to make it comprehensible to lay people. And
Mhm.
so we basically, during pandemic lockdown, when we couldn't record, documentary footage because it was too dangerous for folks, we basically put up an entire online museum. And
Wow.
it wasn't long after that online museum actually was changed into a brick and mortar museum at the University of Oregon, and now it's actually a traveling exhibit that is currently on view in Portland. And so from that, we actually had major pre-production done
Mhm.
for the documentary because we had met all these wonderful folks. We had learned so much about this history and these stories, and that's when we started the documentary. So the origins of it are really in this whole ecosystem of public queer history, which is kind of unique because archives don't include queer histories in this at this depth typically.
Yeah, that's such an important word, depth. There's so much depth there. Well, first of all, let's go back a little bit. I mean, I learned so much watching this, but why do you think so many people, so many women wound up in Eugene?
Well, I mean, part of it was that it was affordable.
Mhm. Yeah.
And remember, these are young folks. These are primarily, women who are this area. I mean, some move for school because the University of Oregon is in Eugene. Um, and others moved because they heard that it was a great place to go, that where a lot of other lesbians were going. And so the word of mouth was really big and it was affordable, like I said. And it was a place where if folks were going to remove themselves from the restrictions of the dominant culture and specifically lesbian feminism was really important at this time, especially to these women
Yeah.
who wanted to actually find a place where they could completely bust out of the paradigm
Yeah.
that they found themselves in and start something brand new. And Eugene, there were the opportunities to start businesses and to create cultural and arts organizations, to live communally,
Mhm.
and really just to make a life where they could be respected and by one another, and also ultimately within the community at large.
One of the comments that really struck me was when I was growing up, women were not allowed to live their lives.
Mm,
I mean, can you sort of talk
yeah.
about the fact that, it's, over time, especially here, women have been allowed to live their lives and be who they are and not have to, keep their identity, literally, in the closet or at home. But talk about that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, that, yeah, I think that this is where I think that we forget.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that we are beyond patriarchy because I don't think that that's true.
Mhm.
I do think that women have a lot more choices than they had even in, the 70s. And I, I also, feel like we forget how limited choices were. We forget that women did not enjoy economic independence, that we forget about compulsory heterosexuality and the mandate of in polite dominant culture of getting married and having children, etc. So it was not the same world, and yet there are reverberations of gender-based structural inequalities that exist today, and especially um, you know, sexual orientation based oppression. And so, as much as this story is about this very particular moment in history,
Yeah.
it also feels rather relevant to what's happening today,
Oh,
which is why I think it's a real beacon for LGBTQ plus um, youth and folks up to like Gen X and beyond.
exactly. So 83 interviews were done, 83 very in-depth interviews. Talk about, molding that into a film that, because I'm sure this could have been, 40 hours of just these great, but just talking about the process of just, taking all this and molding into a film.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, Jim, is that we elected not to use those oral histories in
Mhm.
the film.
Okay.
We recorded brand new testimony.
Okay. Wow.
And the reason for this is because the oral histories are fantastic, but they were recorded as oral histories. They were not meant to be used in a documentary per se. I
Mhm.
mean, I think certainly they could be repurposed in the context of a documentary, and
Yeah.
you could see that on our online digital exhibit, they have been repurposed, and there are a whole bunch of interviews that have been put together to kind of like create stories within this online museum exhibit. But ultimately, we felt that if we are going to make a film, we have to come at the whole thing in using what cinema has to offer.
Hmm.
And that is, let's bring these stories into the present moment.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a history documentary, but the film itself is also about the lives of 9 representative lesbians who built the community
Mhm.
now. And you can draw a straight line from their lives as lesbian world builders in their youth in Eugene to the people who they are today,
Exactly.
who are operating under the same ethical frameworks as were established and built when they were young folks just showed up as lesbian migrants, to Eugene.
Exactly. Can you talk a little bit about the anti-gay ballot measure 9 in 1992?
Ballot Measure 9 was a really big deal in Oregon, and it was a huge deal in the LGBTQ plus community because it really brought the community to a crossroads where there was a decision that had to be made by every person, which is, can I come out?
Hmm.
Should I come out? Will I come out? Is
Yeah.
it safe to come out? Because it no longer could queer folks kind of like hang out in the shadows and do their parallel, worlds to the straight world, because they needed allies to step up and to help defend their dignity, frankly, because Measure 9 was about codifying in the Oregon Constitution the unacceptability of queer communities, and this was meant to exclude queer people from just life, but also in particular from jobs, from being teachers and being part of the state government and things like that. But the whole point was to try to further marginalize queer people. And so, the LGBTQ plus community, and especially these Eugene lesbians,
Yeah.
organized to create coalitions with queer folks, with straight allies, and come out against this really reprehensible
Yeah.
and disgusting measure. And they won.
That's great. Tell me about, so you live in Eugene, or where do you
I
live?
actually live in Portland, Oregon,
Okay.
and my niece goes to University of Oregon,
Okay.
so I'm tied to there at the moment while she's finishing
Exactly.
school, but also through this project.
Exactly. You mentioned this earlier, but we're dealing with a really scary time right now with our administration, where people are trying to erase us, pretend we don't exist. I mean, why is this film? I mean, this film just feels as important as ever. But can you sort of talk about the relevance, that, especially now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that has been particularly interesting to me, we've been working on this for a long time since, I mean, 2018, the whole ecosystem of the oral histories and the digital and in-person exhibits and things like that, and into the documentary. And this has been a time when we have seen so much resistance to to trans especially, and queer visibility. I think it actually is not uncommon that elders are invisibilized.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we also are seeking to deal with in this film, by saying like, hey, these folks aren't locked in amber. They're still like, they're here and they're among us and they're cool. But I do believe strongly that the disrupting the erasure of LGBTQ plus people, particularly lesbians, from dominant histories, from media representation, is extremely important.
Mhm.
Um, and to amplify these narratives of resistance, of engagement, um, against structural oppression. This is something that honors these people, these elders who have done all this work, but also gives courage by association to the younger generations to say, like, look, it's hard times.
Yeah.
We've done this before, and we have been successful in maintaining our dignity, in preserving our culture, and in and sticking together in community. And I think that there's a longing for that right now. And at our screenings, I'm amazed at how it becomes pop-up community,
Yeah.
where people from across generations feel honored and feel served by these stories.
Oh, congratulations. So what's next for them? I mean, we're looking forward to sharing it here with Out on Film, but I mean, down the line, where will people be able to see this film?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That's a really great question. Well, we're really excited because we have just entered into agreements with two distributors.
Oh, wow.
One in Paris, France, who will be distributing to primarily to European audiences, Le Centre Audiovisuel de Simone de Beauvoir, which is a feminist film distributor, and also a wonderful US-based distributor, Good Docs, who will be distributing the film to audiences worldwide. And so while we are still continuing with our festival distribution, and we have also been distributing to independent cinemas, we also are excited to kind of get global.
That is great. Congratulations on the film, and thank you so much. I am so excited to share this with the Out on Film audiences. beginning next week. I think they're going to love the film. Courtney, it was a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on everything. And I definitely hope we can work together again moving forward.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.